The sound of her body hitting the cold tiles echoed like a stone falling into a deep well. Gasps rippled through the congregation. A few women screamed. Some stumbled backward, clutching their chests as though the shock alone might snatch the breath from their lungs. Others dropped immediately to their knees, speaking in tongues, calling down fire, calling down mercy, calling down whatever name of God they believed answered quickest. But Ozoho did not move. Her eyes remained fixed on the writhing figure on the floor. Adavis lay twisted on her back, her hands gripping her belly so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her breath came in sharp, short bursts like someone drowning. The movements inside her stomach were not natural. No living child moved like that. It bulged once, twice, then rolled again like a creature clawing from the inside. A heavy hush swallowed the church. Even the music stopped. Only the deep, rattling groans from Adavis filled the air. Groans that sounded nothing like a woman's pain, but like something ancient, hungry, and furious awakening after a long slumber. Pastor Ojanoga froze completely. His eyes widened as the horror unfolded before him. The microphone slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a dull thud, but he did not bend to pick it up. His knees trembled under his frail weight, and his chest rose and fell rapidly, as though each breath required a battle. His mind screamed with memory. The nights he spent in secrecy, the whispered promises, the weakness he tried to bury, the lips that should never have met his. And now, the proof was there, alive, restless, angry, inside the woman writhing at the entrance to the sanctuary. The church, his calling, his family, his God, everything he had stood for, was now staring at him with accusation. On the floor, Adavis's neck jerked backward. Her eyes rolled upward until only the whites showed. A deep voice came out of her, nothing like the frightened tone she had spoken with days earlier. Blood for blood, covenant for covenant. The altar must drink. The words vibrated through the atmosphere. Several people cried out at once. Some tried to run, but the doors slammed shut on their own with a violent, thunderous force that shook the entire building. The windows rattled. The lights flickered. A thick heaviness settled over the air, dense and suffocating, like smoke without flame. It wasn't the kind of presence you could ignore. Everyone knew immediately. Something had entered the sanctuary. Elder Idoko was the first to regain movement. He rushed forward, seized the fallen microphone, and shouted with a thunder that seemed to tear through the air itself. Everyone on your feet, lift your voice and pray. Voices rose instantly, frantic, desperate, broken, and the floor reverberated beneath the stampede of prayers that followed. Jesus, 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 blood of the Lamb, Holy Ghost fire. The prayer warriors charged forward like soldiers, their faces set, their Bibles raised, sweat already pouring as though the battle had begun hours ago. But Ozoho did not join them. She walked slowly toward the fallen woman, unshaken, unblinking, her expression carved out of something that had survived storms before. There was a calm about her that did not match the chaos. A stillness, not of fear, but of fire. She knelt beside Adavis, her white gown spreading like an angelic sheet around her knees. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft, steady. Adavis, look at me. The figure on the ground convulsed once more, then stopped. The head turned slowly. The eyes that opened were not the eyes of a young woman. They were ancient, hungry, and cold. Those eyes fixed on Ozoho. A hush fell again. Even the prayer warriors stopped mid-chant. Something in the air pulsed, like two invisible storms circling each other. And then the voice that came through Adavis was a whisper, but everyone heard it. Why for the chosen flame? You came late. The debt is already written. Ozoho felt her heartbeat slow, not stop, slow, as though something was reaching inside her ribs, touching her spirit, testing her strength. But she did not flinch. I am the covenant of mercy, she said softly. I am the altar of intercession, and I stand here tonight to claim what belongs to God. The voice inside Adavis laughed, a sound that was not human but layered, like many voices speaking through the same mouth. God, it hissed. Where was your God when the covenant was sealed? Where was your God when your husband laid on the wrong altar? Where was your God when blood touched blood and breath entered the womb? Ozohu's jaw tightened, but she did not look away, because she knew now. She knew everything. The cousin's words, the dream, the whispers in the night, the weight in her husband's silence. This was not just adultery. This was covenant, a covenant that predated them all. One made long before any of them knew they had been chosen as pieces in a war between altars. The kind of covenant that did not break simply because someone said sorry. The kind of covenant that demanded payment. Blood for blood. The voice said it again. This time, the lights flickered and went out entirely, plunging the church into darkness. Screams filled the void. People grabbed their children. Some dropped to the ground. Others tried to rebuke the air itself. In the darkness, something moved. Not footsteps. Not breathing. Something older. Something vast. Something that had been waiting. And then, light returned. But not from the bulbs. From Ozohu. Her entire body glowed. Not with fire, not with heat, but with a white radiance that looked like moonlight flowing from inside her skin. Her hair lifted as though the wind moved only around her. Her eyes were no longer filled with fear, nor grief, nor anger. They were filled with authority. Someone in the congregation dropped to their knees. Then another, and another, until the entire auditorium bowed. Not to her, but to the God who had answered her cry. Ozohu reached out and touched Atavis's forehead. The moment her skin made contact, a scream tore through the church. This time not from fear, from separation. The spirit inside her recoiled like something burned by the sun. You do not have the right, it cried. But Ozohu's voice rolled like thunder. Mercy has every right. Grace has every right. And tonight, the covenant is broken. Something snapped, an invisible crack like the sound of chains shattering. The swelling in Atavis's belly stopped moving. Her body went limp. Her breathing steadied. And the silence that followed was not fearful. It was stunned. Even the air felt lighter. Even darkness felt distant. Pastor Ojinoga fell to his knees, not from weakness, but from revelation. Tears streamed down his face, not of guilt alone, but of the weight of what mercy had just spared him from. Ozohu did not look at him. Not yet. The work was not finished. She stood slowly, turned to the congregation, and spoke, not loudly, but with the authority of a woman whose spirit had been refined through fire. This battle is not over. The altar that demanded blood is still awake, and the one who raised it must return to silence it. Far away, in the deep shadows of the Kogi forest, Babayanich looked up from his shrine. The flames had turned black again, and now they whispered a new name. Ozohu. The war had officially begun. Night returned to the city like a slow, creeping tide. The revival had ended hours earlier, yet no one truly left unchanged. Some congregants went home shaken. Others went home convinced they had witnessed the raw clash of ancient powers. A few left in quiet triumph, for they believed they had seen proof that not all altars were equal, that some flames burned deeper, stronger, older. But in the Onu household, the night did not bring peace. It brought silence, a silence so thick it felt like the walls were listening. The house stood in near total darkness, save for a single candle burning on the dining table. The flame flickered softly, casting trembling shadows along the walls. But even the flame seemed hesitant, as though aware of the heaviness in the room. Ozohu sat on the floor, her knees bent, her palms resting open on her thighs. She had not changed out of her white gown. She had not removed her headscarf. She sat in still, quiet prayer, not desperate, not fearful, but with the steady posture of a woman preparing for war. Pastor Ojinoga sat across from her, slumped in his chair. His face was drawn, his shoulders hunched, his eyes hollow. He stared at the floor, unable to meet her gaze. Hours passed like that. No words, no movement, just the silence of two souls standing at the mouth of a valley they must cross. Finally, Ozohu spoke. Her voice was soft, but not fragile. Do you want to tell me now? The candle flame trembled. Ojinoga's fingers twitched against his thigh, but he did not look up. He swallowed hard, and the sound was loud in the room. I didn't mean for it to happen, he whispered. The words sounded like they were dragged from someplace deep, where shame had made a home. Ozoa didn't interrupt. He continued. It was during the outreach crusade last year in Lokoja. The church had just finished a 3-day fast. I was exhausted, spiritually, emotionally, physically. I had been fighting temptations I didn't tell anyone about. I didn't want it to look like the anointing was weakening. He laughed bitterly. Pastors don't get to be human. They don't get to struggle. They don't get to be broken. His voice cracked. I was weak. I was alone. And she was there. Always there. Listening. Smiling. Calling me Papa. Encouraging me. Making me feel like I was still chosen. That I was still powerful. That God still loved me. He covered his face with both hands. And one night, I went to her. I don't know what took over me. I don't know how I got there. It was like something was pulling me. Like I was walking outside my own body. His hands tightened into fists. I thought it was just sin, Ozoho. Just lust. Just a mistake. But after, I saw something in her eyes. Something old. Something watching me from inside her. His voice dropped to a whisper, and I knew I had touched an altar. Silence again. The kind that presses and suffocates. Ozohu inhaled slowly, deep, steady, like someone accepting a truth she already knew before hearing it. When the covenant was made, she said quietly, "You were not alone." Her words were not accusation. They were revelation. Ojinoga looked up sharply, his eyes wide, trembling. "You know?" She nodded. "I met her cousin." He leaned back as though someone had struck him. A defeated breath left his lungs. "My God." Ozohu rose slowly to her feet. She walked to him, placed her hand gently on his shoulder. Not with affection, not with pity, but with the steady weight of strength. "There is still mercy," she said softly. "But mercy must be claimed, and this altar must be confronted where it was raised." He looked at her as though she had asked him to walk into fire. "Kogi," he whispered. She nodded. "Yes, you must return." His breath shook. "No," he said quickly, fear sparking in his eyes. "You don't understand, Ozo. That shrine is not like others. Those spirits, they do not sleep. They do not forgive. And Baba, he is not just a priest. He was born inside that forest. He is the voice of those spirits. He is their son." Ozohu placed her other hand on his cheek and turned his face gently toward her. "And you are a son of God." Their foreheads touched, and for the first time in months, they prayed together, not as pastor and wife, not as broken and betrayed, not as shamed and ashamed, but as two souls standing on the same battleground. The journey to Kogi began before dawn. The air was cold. Mist clung to the road. The sky was still ink blue, holding back the day. Elder Idoko drove, his Bible resting on the dashboard, a quiet determination carved into the lines of his aging face. Two prayer warriors sat in the back, whispering softly in tongues. Ozohu sat beside her husband, her fingers intertwined with his, not to reassure him, but to anchor him. No one spoke. Words were too small now. It took 5 hours to reach the outskirts of Okine. The soil changed color, dark, rich, tinged with red. The air grew thicker, heavier, like the land itself remembered grief. Lonely farmlands stretched into dense forests that rose like walls of dark green. Finally, the road narrowed into a footpath. No one needed to say it. They were close. Ojinoga began to tremble. Ozohu squeezed his hand. "Do not look back," she murmured. "We walk forward or we do not walk at all." They stepped out of the car and continued on foot. The forest swallowed sound. No birds. No insects. Not even the wind moved the leaves. It was too quiet, too still, like something was waiting. The deeper they walked, the thicker the air became, until every breath felt like swallowing smoke. Then they saw it, the shrine, a small iron roof hut with clay walls smeared in red dye. 3 tall carved pillars stood around it, each wrapped in dried palm leaves and cowrie shells. A heavy stone bowl sat at the center, filled with something dark and still. Babaya Niche sat before it, cross-legged, unmoving. He did not look surprised to see them. He opened his eyes slowly, eyes that did not look human anymore, eyes that seemed older than the forest around him. "So," he said quietly, "the chosen flame has come to the mouth of the serpent." His gaze slid to Ozohu, and the wife of fire stands with him. Ozohu did not blink. "You summoned something you could not control," she said, "and now it is turning against your own blood." Pain flickered across his face, but only for a moment. "It is the way of covenants," he said. "Everything that is given must be repaid. Everything that is taken must be replaced." He rose to his feet. The air shifted. The forest seemed to inhale. "The child in her womb is not human," he said softly. "It is a vessel, a doorway, a claim. If the child is born, the spirits will walk freely among men once more." Ojinoga stumbled backward as though struck. Ozo did not move. "So we stopped the birth," she said. Babaya Niche's voice dropped into something older, deeper, layered. "You cannot stop what has already been chosen." Ozohu stepped forward, closer to the shrine, closer to the heat of darkness. "I'm not trying to stop it," she said. "I am here to replace it." The forest froze. Even Babaya Niche went still. Shock flickered across his face. "You would offer your own life?" he whispered. Ozohu shook her head. "No." Her voice was steady. "I offer myself as the altar, not the sacrifice." The earth trembled beneath their feet. The trees shuddered. The sky darkened. Something ancient stirred. A wind rose, slow, heavy, circular, swirling dust around them like a storm of ash. The spirits had awakened. Voices whispered through the trees. Not in language, in hunger. Babaya Niche's voice cracked. "You do not understand what you are calling to. This altar was made with blood. It can only answer to blood." Ozohu lifted her hands. Her eyes glowed, white again, but brighter now, brighter than before. "Then let the blood answer." Lightning split the sky. Thunder shook the earth. A howl rose, not human, not animal, something else. The prayer warriors fell to their knees, chanting. Elder Idoko stood firm, trembling but unmoving. Pastor Ojinoga reached out to his wife. "Ozohu," but she did not turn. She stepped into the circle of the shrine. Her feet sank into the earth. Light poured from her body like a river of molten stars. The spirits screamed. The trees shook. The earth cracked. And in the heart of the forest, where blood had once spoken, mercy answered back. The shrine bowl shattered. The carved pillars broke. The air collapsed inward as though the world exhaled. And then, silence. Deep, complete. When the dust settled, Ozohu stood alone in the center of the clearing. But she was not the same. Her eyes were ancient now. Her posture was unbreakable. Her voice, when she finally spoke, carried the gravity of both flame and water. "It is done." Babaya Niche collapsed to his knees. His strength was gone. His altar was gone. His power was gone. Pastor Ojinoga stared at his wife, not with fear, not with awe, but with reverence. She turned to him slowly. "The covenant is broken," she said, "but the child lives." His heart seized. "What do we do?" Her voice lowered. "We return home. We wait. And when the time comes, we choose who the child will belong to." The forest remained silent. The spirits did not answer. Because now, the battle had shifted, not into darkness, but into destiny. The dawn did not rise gently over the town of Odu, as it usually did. There was no soft orange glow spreading across the rooftops. No early birdsong weaving through the quiet. No calm breeze rolling from the eastern hills to kiss the church compound. Instead, the morning broke like something wounded. A heavy cloud settled over the sky, thick and bruised, hiding the sun completely. The air felt crowded, like many unseen eyes watched from every corner. Even the air carried a strange heaviness, as though the world was waiting to see what the next breath of fate would bring. The congregation had gone home in silence the night before. No one spoke of what they witnessed. They did not need to. Every door in the town knew. Every compound whispered. A spirit had spoken in the sanctuary, and a woman had answered it. Ozoa did not sleep. She sat in her small room, a single lamp burning beside her, her Bible open but unread. The words were on the pages, yes, but her eyes were far away. Her mind was not on scripture. Her spirit was listening. Listening to the silence. Listening to the echo of the voice that had spoken through Atavis. The altar must drink. That sentence did not leave her. It repeated in her chest, like a remembered heartbeat. She remembered how the lights went out, how darkness pressed like a physical hand, how the spirit had recognized her, not by her face, not by her voice, but by something inside her, something that had always been there, waiting for the day it would be called. Wife of the chosen flame. Chosen flame. Her husband, Pastor Ojanoga. Ozohu closed her eyes slowly, and breath trembled through her. Not tears. She had cried her share. This was deeper. This was the kind of ache that does not ask for softness. The kind forged in the heart of a woman who has seen what others cannot see, who has stood between death and life long enough to understand the price of holding back the night. The lamp flickered. Something moved beyond the window. No shape, no sound, but a shift in air pressure that let her know a presence lingered nearby. Not evil, not holy, something watching, something waiting. The war had already begun. Pastor Ojanoga had not slept either. He sat alone in the sanctuary, the same place where the Spirit spoke through Atavis. His hands rested on the altar, hands once steady, strong, full of purpose. Now they trembled like those of an old man. His collar felt heavy around his throat. His Bible lay unopened before him. His prayers came broken. Lord, I did not know. I did not understand. I did not want. His voice broke. He pressed his forehead to the altar. I am your servant. I have always been your servant. Why did darkness find me? But the room did not answer. The altar remained quiet. Only the memory answered. The memory he tried to bury. The night he never spoke of. The moment that led to this war. His shame was not just sin. It was covenant. His hands lifted slowly, trembling. He knew what he had to do. He could not run anymore. He could not hide behind holy words. He had to face the fire. He rose to his feet, and he walked to their room. Ozoa did not turn when he entered. She felt him before he touched the door. She heard the weight of his steps, the heaviness in his breath. She smelled the faint scent of sweat and incense clinging to him like guilt. She remained seated, only her eyes lifted. Her voice was calm, unbroken, a still river holding depth beyond sight. You're ready to speak. It was not a question. He stopped. For a moment, he could not reply. His throat felt tight, like words were stones lodged beneath it. Then slowly, painfully, his voice found shape. Yes. The word cracked, opened the silence between them. He sank to his knees, not because she asked him to, not because of guilt alone, but because strength had left him the night before. The truth was heavy, and truth demands kneeling. Ozohu, he whispered, his voice hoarse. I have sinned, not only against you, not only against God, but against the very altar I was called to serve. She did not flinch. Her face did not twist with bitterness. She only waited, the way fire waits for wood. Tell me, she said, and he did. It began long before Atavis, before ministry, before marriage, before calling, before salvation, even. When he was young, barely 20, he had traveled to the village of Okula to study under an elder herbalist. He had gone only to learn about healing herbs, not spirits, not altars, not power. But power does not need invitation. Power only needs willingness. There was a night, a festival, a ceremony of awakening. The entire village had gathered around the ancient tree in the forest, the one no one cut, no one burned, no one touched, not even hunters. The tree whose roots were older than language. The tree whose branches held the history of the land. They called it Abijah Owo, the serpent tree. He had not intended to stay, but curiosity is its own chain. They danced, they sang, they drank. They called upon the ancestral spirits to bless the land. And then she appeared, not a spirit, a woman, barefoot, dressed in white beads from neck to ankle, skin shimmering with sacred oil, hair woven with cowries and dried leaves. Her presence commanded silence. Even the drums stopped without instruction. Her name was Adia, priestess of the serpent tree. She did not speak his name. She spoke his destiny. You carry fire under your ribs, she had said, touching the center of his chest. Fire that will lead men. Fire that will call heaven. But fire cannot burn without sacrifice. He remembered laughing. Laughing like a child who did not understand that he stood at the edge of a blade. That night, in the glow of ancestral flames, he was asked to do something simple. Touch blood. Just blood. A small cut on the wrist. A drop. A covenant of curiosity. A covenant of promise. A covenant of ignorance. But covenants do not care about intention. Blood remembers. Blood binds. Blood calls. He did it. He touched her blood, and she touched his. A thread was tied that night. A thread that followed him into ministry. A thread that followed him into marriage. A thread that waited until the right moment to pull. That moment had come, not when he sinned, but when Adavis conceived. Because the pregnancy was not just pregnancy. It was the calling in flesh. The covenant had awakened, and the altar had come to collect. When he finished speaking, Ozohu did not move. She did not breathe for many seconds. Then she rose slowly to her feet. Her face was no longer calm, no longer composed, no longer the gentle wife who had carried prayer like oil. Her eyes burned, not with hatred, not with betrayal, but with war. You should have told me. Her voice was quiet, too quiet. He bowed his head, tears falling like rain. I was ashamed. She closed her eyes just once, and when she opened them again, her voice carried iron. This is not about shame anymore. This is about altars, spirits, covenant blood, a child spoken into existence by an ancient throne. She stepped past him. We are going to Okula Forest. He looked up sharply. No, Ozohu, that place. She stopped, turned, and her voice was a blade. You laid your past at my feet. Now I lay the future before yours. If we do not silence that altar, it will not just take Adavis. It will take you, me, our children, the church, the town, everything. She walked toward the door. Prepare yourself. You will go with me. He trembled, because he knew she was right, and because the forest was waiting. News travels in silence faster than it travels in speech. By noon, Elder Idoko, Mama Grace the intercessor woman, and 3 prayer warriors stood ready in the church courtyard. Not because they were told, but because they dreamed the same dream. A tree with roots drinking blood. A serpent coiled around it. Eyes watching, waiting, calling. Ozohu stepped out first. Pastor Ojinoga followed, head lowered. No one asked questions. No one demanded explanation. Some journeys do not need words. Only obedience. They formed a circle. Hands joined. Faces lifted to the sky that refused to shine. The air shifted again, thick, pressing, ancient. Ozohu prayed, but she did not shout. Her voice was steady, slow, deliberate. God of the altar that cannot be overturned. God whose covenant outlives death. Walk before us. Walk behind us. Walk within us. If we fall, you rise. If we tremble, you stand. The land is old, but you are older. The serpent is wise, but you are wisdom. We do not go as flesh. We go as fire. When she finished, the wind blew, not softly, hard, sudden, as though an unseen hand moved the air itself. The journey had been accepted, and the forest had heard. They walked through the narrow path that led beyond the town, into the thick bush that grew wild and tall. Birds did not sing here. Branches did not sway. Shadows were thicker, silence heavier. The deeper they went, the more the world changed, not in sight but in feeling. The ground pulsed faintly under their feet, like a heartbeat, like something alive, watching, waiting, calling. The trees grew larger, their roots twisting like giant serpents across the earth. The air smelled of old rain and soil untouched for centuries. And then they reached it, the clearing, the ancient tree, Agbija Owo. Its trunk was massive, blackened, scarred, as though fire had licked it but could not consume it. Its branches spread like arms reaching toward the sky, and wrapped around its base. A serpent, not flesh, not ghost, something in between. Eyes glowing, breathing slowly, ancient, aware. The ground trembled when it lifted its head. Pastor Ojinoga stopped breathing. Mama Grace fell to her knees. Elder Idoko began to speak in tongues so violently his body shook. Ozohu stepped forward. The serpent watched her. The air thickened. The silence pressed. And then a voice came, not from the serpent, not from the tree, not from the earth, from everywhere. The blood returns. Ozohu did not blink. Her voice rose, not loud, but unshakable. No, the blood is redeemed. The serpent stirred, slow, vast, ancient. The ground groaned. The altar awakened. The war began. And Ozohu did not step back. She stepped forward, into the ancient throne, into the heart of the covenant, into the fire no one else had ever survived. The serpent opened its mouth. The wind roared. The sky darkened. Pastor Ojinoga screamed her name, but she did not turn, because a woman who goes to break an altar does not look back, not even once. The wind did not merely move. It shifted as though the forest inhaled. The leaves trembled without sound. The branches swayed without breeze. The serpent coiled at the base of the ancient tree lifted its head, slow and deliberate, like a king acknowledging the presence of another throne. Ozo did not flinch. She stood in the clearing, her white gown brushing the earth, her feet planted as though roots had grown from her heels into the soil itself. The others stood behind her, some shaking, some whispering scripture, some battling the urge to turn and run. The serpent's eyes glowed a deep amber, ancient, knowing, unhurried. Voices rose behind her. Mama Grace's prayer was breaking into sobbing tongues. Elder Idoko's voice trembled like a drum beaten underwater. Pastor Ojinoga could barely breathe. But Ozohu, her heartbeat slowed, her breath steadied, her spirit, once quiet, now stood on a mountain no eye could see. The serpent moved, just an inch, yet the entire earth seemed to shudder. And from the roots of the ancient tree, a voice rose. Not like wind, not like man, not like spirit, like the ground remembering. She returns. The voice was layered, like thousands of echoes converging into one. Ozohu spoke, her tone calm, as if addressing a familiar elder. I'm not the one you speak of. Silence trembled. Then the serpent turned its gaze fully upon her. The ancient voice replied, blood remembers even when the mind forgets. The ground pulsed beneath her feet, once, twice, like a heartbeat. Pastor Ojinoga felt his spine go cold. No, he whispered. They're calling you something else, not Ozohu. Ozohu did not move her gaze. Speak plainly, she said. The trees seemed to shiver, bark cracking like thunder. The voice deepened. Daughter of Aduk, child of the lineage of fire, keeper of the covenant your ancestors broke. A gasp tore through Mama Grace. Elder Idoko stumbled backward. Pastor Ojinoga froze, his breath gone. Ozohu's hands did not shake, but her eyes, for the first time since the altar awoke, shifted. Aduk, she whispered. Her mother's name. Her mother who died when she was 6. Her mother no one spoke of. Her mother whose picture had been hidden, torn, buried. Pastor Ojinoga's heart crumpled inside him. He had always believed Ozohu's calling was purity, but purity was never her lineage. Her lineage was power. The voice rose again. When your mother fled the forest, she carried fire in her womb. She carried a covenant of light meant to rule altars, not bow to them. Ozohu's breath caught, but only for a moment. And yet, she said, her voice steady, I serve the God whose fire consumes all other fires. The serpent's tongue flicked once. The air rippled. Yes, and that is why you are the only one who can stand here now. The others were trembling, not from fear, but because they understood. This war did not begin with adultery, not with sin, not with shame. This was ancestral. This was bloodline destiny. This was a throne passed down through mothers and daughters. And Ozohu, unknowingly, was returning to claim what her family had abandoned. The serpent shifted its body, scales whispering against the earth. You come to break the covenant, but you do not yet understand its price. Ozohu raised her chin. I understand enough. The covenant was made through blood. It can be broken through blood. The serpent's eyes narrowed, like a teacher studying a student. Then speak the name of the one whose blood must fall. Ozohu's lips parted, but before she spoke, Pastor Ojinoga stepped forward. His voice cracked like dry leaves. No, don't say it. Ozohu turned to him, but the serpent spoke first. He knows. The forest darkened, as though clouds formed beneath the leaves. The altar was awakened through his blood. The child was conceived through his vow. The covenant stands upon his life. Pastor Ojinoga's knees buckled. He sank to the earth, hands gripping dirt. For forgiveness, I have prayed. For mercy, I have begged. But his voice broke. I never wanted my life to be taken. The serpent did not blink. One life for one life. That is the law of ancient altars. Silence fell, heavy, violent, suffocating. Mama Grace let out a sharp cry. Elder Idoko dropped his Bible. The prayer warriors stepped back, fear cracking their courage. But Ozohu remained still. She turned slowly, her eyes deep as evening fire, and she spoke to the serpent, not in pleading, not in fear, but in authority. Then hear me. I do not break altars with the blood of the guilty. I break them with the blood of the Lamb. The serpent recoiled like something struck. The roots of the tree trembled. The wind howled. The ground heaved beneath them. The voice rose in fury. That blood does not belong here. Ozohu's eyes blazed. It belongs everywhere. The forest erupted. Branches thrashed though no hand touched them. Leaves flew like torn feathers. The serpent hissed, rearing back, mouth opening wide. Pastor Ojinoga grabbed Ozohu's arm. Ozohu run, but she did not. She stepped forward, toward the serpent, toward the ancient altar, toward the throne of blood. The wind roared. The trees bent. Voices, thousands of ancestral voices screamed. And Ozohu spoke a single sentence. The sentence that would decide the fate of every living soul tied to this covenant. I choose to stand in the place of sacrifice. Everything stopped. The wind froze. The leaves hung still. Even the serpent lowered its head. Pastor Ojinoga screamed, raw, broken. No, but Ozohu did not look back. Because a woman called to break a covenant does not save herself. She saves everyone else, even if the price is her life.